Welcome to the Nevada Hoops Podcast, where we'll be discussing all things University of Nevada Wolfpack men's basketball. Thank you for joining us here on our first ever episode. And if there's one thing that I have figured out so far, is that I really struggle with what to say in this first minute of these intros. So we're just going to kind of bypass all of that and just kind of get right after it. So I did do an initial recording last weekend, and it was about a 45-minute long episode of analyzing the Nevada basketball roster, and we kind of started with the departing players from last year, returning players, and then the incoming transfers, and it ended up 45 minutes long, a little bit longer than I wanted to go, and after listening to it, the audio was just not up to snuff. I came into this with just the plan I was going to do everything on my phone and just do everything on the super cheap. And yeah, it's just, I don't think that's going to work. So I ended up ordering a mic, and here we are. I'm still just using very basic recording app that doesn't really give me any ability to edit. So there's going to be a lot of mistakes on this stuff. And you're gonna have to fight through it with me. But yeah, looking back on that first recording, the audio, as I said, was not up to snuff. I learned that I talk really slow and have long pauses and say a lot. And I'm pretty sure if I would have released that, the majority of people that would have turned in for it would have thought that I was mentally impaired and probably wouldn't have come back for the second episode. So we scrapped that, and here we are. We're rolling now. So what we're looking at going forward, the plan will be that we're just going to do one episode a week. It's probably going to be released on like a Sunday, give or take. And that's going to analyze the upcoming games for the week, and then we'll recap the past week's games, and then probably do a brief. We'll touch on the rest of the Mountain West Conference games and stuff, and then. But with this first week, we're gonna try to bust out 3 episodes this weekend. That was the other thing about that first one we released, being 45 minutes long, analyzing the Wolfpack roster. Might have been a little dry for some, so we're going to start it off with something a little bit more exciting maybe for some folks, and we're going to talk conference realignment on this first episode. So unless you've been living under a rock, you know what's transpired here in the last month with the Mountain West Conference basically being split in two. I don't think we're not gonna hit on that all that much as far as what happened. It is what it is. We're just gonna kind of focus more on where we're looking from this point going forward. So obviously we were left with we had the 6 full members, and then we had Hawaii as football only. And we were able to go out, get UTEP edition for all sports, and then obviously through some negotiation with Hawaii, we got them to come on board, bringing all the rest of their sports besides football. So Mountain West is intact with now with 8 full members. And so I think, I guess to touch on with where we're gonna go from here as a conference. I guess the first thing that we're gonna look at is we're just gonna talk a little bit about the FCS schools. So So right away, the Mountain West had Texas State in their crosshairs, and I think they went at them pretty hard. And by all indications, it looks like that was pretty much sabotaged by the Pac-12. Um, and Texas State came out and said that for the time being, they're just gonna stay status quo in the Sun Belt there. And the Mountain West then quickly shifted over to Tarleton State, and there were a few reports out there that said things were heating up, and then all of a sudden it just went it just went dark. And I'm pretty sure that the powers that be in the NCAA had a little talk with the Mountain West, and with all the things that are going on with the House settlement right now, and that I'm pretty sure that they told us that they really don't want to see the FBS conferences going down and snagging any more FCSs, at least for the time being, because that just really went dark. And I think we can pretty much, for the purposes of this discussion going forward, we can just go we can go with that. So yeah, safe to say there's not going to be any FCS call-ups, but I guess let's just take a couple minutes and just dive into those FCS possibilities out there. Uh, Starting with Tarleton State, obviously, either we were really interested or they just decided to throw up a smoke screen. But I'll admit, when I first heard Tarleton State, I was kind of like, what? I I didn't know anything more about them other than that they were in the WAC for basketball. But it didn't take me long before you start diving in, where you're like, it's pretty easy to see uh, the potential there. So the university is in, I believe it's Stevensville, Texas, approximately like an hour south of Dallas. Um, Big university. Last year, their basketball team had a really solid year. Came in at 129 in KenPom, took second in the WAC. They're coached by Billy Gillespie, who's he's been around a lot of different big programs. The football team, FCS, obviously this is their first year of actually being eligible to be in the playoffs, the FCS. So because they had moved up from D2 like 4 years ago, this is the first year they're actually eligible, and they're already ranked inside the top 10, um, ahead of a school like University of Montana. Um, you can really see that. I mean, they're supposedly in the Texas A&M system, got a lot of money behind them. Building, if I didn't mention already, building a brand new basketball arena, going to seat 7,000. It's going to be ready at the start of next season. Just uh, a lot of um, potential there. And one of the things, I guess, when you look at the whole, so what about Texas, um, makes it so appealing? Why does the Mountain West want to get back in there? Well, obviously there's been a lot made about the getting into some different time zones. So right now, um, we're all Hawaii, Pacific, or Mountain time zone. Um, So Texas obviously gets you into that central. And one of the big things about Texas, um, it's pretty much all the coaches, opposing coaches in the Mountain West, they really like to have a school down there because if not all, the majority of them are recruiting in Texas because it's such a talent-rich state. So I mean, like take a school like Wyoming, for instance, that does quite a bit. I'd say probably on average has 12 kids, uh, at least 12 scholarship kids a year from the state of Texas. You know, they like to use that in their recruiting when they can say, "Hey, we're gonna be down there every other year playing in Texas," and so it helps them a little bit on getting some of those kids where they can tell their parents that they're gonna be able to watch a few games without heading all the way up to Laramie. But so I think a lot of coaches like that aspect of it. Obviously, um, they I mean, in all honesty, the all the G6 programs in Texas is really kind of a dime a dozen, right? I could totally envision a world in 3 or 4 years where a Tarleton State could actually be the top G6 program in Texas. Could totally see it. But I realize it seems like the majority of people out there don't, they're really against it just from when you go to the fan forums and stuff like that. Just everybody really negative on the Tarleton thing. I think just because they're a newer school and we're D2 a handful of years ago. But I mean, look look what they've been able to do in such a short time, and they're already outdrawing, I believe, over half of the Mountain West in attendance for football this year. But whatever. It looks like I said, it looks like the powers of be have said that's a no-go, and look like the Mountain West is looking other places. But just a quick touch on a few of the other FCS programs. Uh, Sacramento State, that's a no-go for me. I mean, are you? I mean, let's be honest. We're we're a basketball conference, even still with the departures. Um, we're not going to take on a school who's one of the worst Division 1 basketball programs in the country. It just kill us. The Montana schools, yeah, I get it. Sure, I mean their football teams could come in right now and compete just fine. Um, but with the Montana schools, and I know a little bit about that, um, it just really comes down to media market. If the Mountain West were to add, it wouldn't just be one, it would be two because um, that'd be a package deal with those two schools. So I mean, if you were to take that on, I mean, it's immediately, it's gonna hurt your media rights TV package that you're gonna get. I mean, it's literally, if you were just hypothetically, if you were to add the Montana schools, everybody else, all your existing members are gonna make less money in TV, and that's what's driving all of this. Okay, so it's not gonna happen. With all due respect to some people out there that would really like to make that ad. Um, yeah, it's just not. I just don't see it. Um, Moving on to the Dakotas, North Dakota State, South Dakota State. Uh, Obviously, again, the the football on the field product is great. Those teams step right in they're upper half of the conference. And I guess with those two schools, another like a little bit of a potential benefit is um, because they play in the Summit in basketball, and then they play in a different conference for football above the Missouri Valley. Um, they could potentially leave the rest of their sports in the Summit, and then you just bring your football programs over. So I mean, there's a little bit of benefit there where the Mountain West wouldn't be having to travel with all the rest of their sports up to the Dakotas. But again, it's just the same thing. There's just the media markets just aren't there for those schools. Um, so not really seeing that either. So that leaves so for football, obviously we're at 8, but they really want to get to at least 9 for football because yeah, I mean if you have 8, then you're only got the 7 regular season games, and then that leaves everybody trying to find 5 out of conference football games every year, and nobody really wants to do that. So everybody would so I think either thinking they're thinking we got to get to 9, maybe 10. And so that because we've pretty much exhausted all the Western FBS members. Um, I'll touch on New Mexico State after we talk about these. Um, so the conference went to Northern Illinois and Toledo, and having discussions with them about football membership and leaving the rest of their sports behind over there. And you hear a lot of people like, well, what are they going to do? The MAC's not going to let them keep the rest of their sports programs in there. And well, yeah, of course not. But I mean, there's multiple conferences over there that those schools can align with. I'm sure their first pick is probably the Missouri Valley. My guess is they probably don't get in there, but you've got the Horizon League, which um, would be my guess as to where they would end up. But then you've also got the OVC, Ohio Valley Conference, um, that I'm sure would work if it had to. Uh, it sounds like Northern Illinois is going to be the next edition. Um, there's a dude on a message board that I've been frequenting lately, and he claims that it's pretty much a done deal, and that they're going to be coming over. They're just, but it's probably something that it's they're working out the conference alignment with their other sports and stuff like that, and most likely I would say that's going to happen. Toledo, I don't know. I'd put it at probably about 50-50. Obviously, with the Northern Illinois, gets them into the Central Time Zone. Toledo, get them into the Eastern. It really, um, I get it where people are a lot not, or probably there's a lot of people not super excited thinking, oh, Northern Illinois, Toledo, but I look at them as the max 2 best programs, located probably, I would say, in the 2 best or near the 2 best media markets over there. Probably those would be the 2 schools that are going to bring you the most money TV wise, I think. But yeah, I don't know anything on Toledo as far as any insiders or stuff like that. Toledo fan base seems to be pretty split, half and half. Northern Illinois guys are pretty much all in on it. So yeah, that's where that stands. Bouncing back to New Mexico State, you hear a lot of people, oh, why don't we just add New Mexico State? Why don't we just add the Aggies? Yeah, I mean, I feel for them down there in Las Cruces, but let's be honest. Like we said before, this is stuff's all driven by TV, right? If the Mountain West adds New Mexico State, that just is only thing that means is everyone's gonna make less money on the next TV contract. You hear some people say, well, but that, gives us a little bit of a safety net in case somebody else defects. Well, that safety net's always going to be there. They ain't going anywhere. They're going to they're staying in Conference USA, and if we ever need them, they'll crawl over broken glass to get into the conference. So you might as well just keep them there on standby. And when they're not in the conference, it gives UTEP and New Mexico like the perfect non-conference opponent for all their sports. So I mean, it's probably a double benefit for those schools that they're not in the same conference. Um, so yeah, and I mean, uh, football wise, obviously they had a little bit of a run there with Jerry Kill. I guess that is all that really shows me is any school, and I mean this wouldn't mean no disrespect, but I mean that just shows you that any school can put it together if you hire the right football coach. A guy like Jerry Kill, who's obviously one of the best coaches in the country, was able to flip New Mexico State, a place where I don't know, I didn't look it up, but it felt like hadn't won for my life in my lifetime. But so yeah, but I mean they're just the bottom of the barrel again in football. Their basketball program, which has been pretty pretty amazing when you consider like how many times they've been able to get into the NCAA tournament. They really dominated the WAC there for years. But they're on a little they're in a little bit of a downturn right now. They obviously had some issues there a couple years ago with the coach being fired and just a lot of disciplinary issues with the team and stuff there. But I do feel like they're going to be a little bit better this year than most projections have them. But still, you might as well just sit and wait with New Mexico State. So yeah, we covered FCS, New Mexico State. That's pretty much the plan with football. Gonna go after the MAC schools, try to finish it off with the MAC schools there. So then that brings us to basketball. What probably the majority of you guys turning into this podcast are interested in. So, so it's been reported here in the last couple days that the Mountain West and Grand Canyon are in deep discussions. John Calzano, I think is his name, he reported yesterday that the Mountain West has an offer on the table for Grand Canyon, who wasn't at their West Coast Conference meetings earlier this week. They just no-showed. Now, to me, I would think that probably means they're probably not going to enter the conference next year. They're currently in the WAC, for those who don't know, and they were scheduled to enter the West Coast Conference next season. But yeah, so they no-showed at the conference meetings. Calzano said that the WCC commissioner was in talks with Grand Canyon, trying to lure him, back in, trying to keep him. I'm hoping that is just Grand Canyon doing some negotiating with the WCC because so they had to pay a $17 million entry fee to get into the conference. So I'm assuming they would like to do some negotiating on that. It's going to be a tricky one, right? Because they're going to be like, well, we paid 17 million to go into this conference, but we never actually entered it, so we want our money back. And of course, the WCC is going to be like, no, we're keeping it. So I would imagine they're probably just trying to work that out. I know there's a lot of Mountain West fans that are a little bit negative on Grand Canyon, but I really think this is the big one. That that was me personally. That was my number one target, um, and I wasn't. If you'd asked me a week ago, I was super worried that the pack was gonna nab them, because there were reports before Gonzaga accepted to come into the pack. There were reports out that the pack was also talking to Grand Canyon and St. Mary's, and so I was super worried that they were gonna go snag them. But yeah, I think that program has just all the potential in the world. I get all the negative stuff. People don't like that it's a private Christian university that relies heavily on online degrees. People like to say it's a degree factory or whatnot. Um, I don't know. I don't really, honestly, I don't care about any of that stuff. What I what I care about is they the school. It fits, first of all, it fits perfectly in our footprint, right? I mean, you look at our geographical footprint. We got a little bit of a gap right there. Phoenix, Arizona just fits perfectly. It's like I said, a huge university, right? We're talking like they've got like 120,000 students enrolled right now. I realize only 26,000 of those are on campus, but still, um, just I mean, I see those numbers and I think eyeballs, right? TV. That um, they've got a 7,000 seat gym that they sell out every game. Um, I was listening to the Full Court Press podcast this summer, um, and they had Tarleton State's head basketball coach Billy Gillespie, who has been around the block. He's been the head coach at UTEP, A&M, Kentucky, Texas Tech. Right, so this guy's, if there's a big time basketball program, he's probably visited it. And he said on that podcast that Grand Canyon's home court atmosphere was the best that he's ever seen. So I mean, it's just I really think that Grand Canyon can be the Mountain West's Gonzaga. I think there's that type of potential out there. Last year was the best year that they've had. They had a Ken Palm rating of 52 last year. Obviously, made it to the NCAA tournament, winning the WAC, and they were able to upset St. Mary's in the first round last year. And I mean, they're loaded this year. They're going to be considerably better. They're uh, just got all the potential in the world, in my opinion. So we'll just kind of, from this point on, we're gonna knock on wood, and we're gonna move on with the premise that the Mountain West has secured Grand Canyon. And so just a little tidbit. I don't know if anybody watched the Boise UNLV football game last night, but they had Gloria Navarre as Mountain West commissioner on at halftime, and they they asked her about adding UTEP and Hawaii and all sports, and she said, "Yeah, this is exciting," and but I don't remember the exact quote, but she said something along the lines of, "Yes, and we hope with more schools to follow here in the near future," and had like a big old smile on her face. So I'm assuming that there are some things in the works there. Okay, so let's say we've got Grand Canyon. That will put us at 9 basketball wise. All right, my next move here. This one's a little bit of a long shot, okay? But if we've secured that, then if I'm the Mountain West, I'm picking up the phone and I'm dialing Wichita State and I'm asking them, how happy are you guys in the American? And just see if there's anything that can be worked out. So obviously, when when the PAC was looking at adding a bunch of AAC schools, the the buyout to leave the conference was going to be astronomical, right? It was like, I don't know, 17 or 20 million just to get out. And so that is a big reason why a lot of those teams weren't even really considering it. But I did do some scrounging around on the internet, and from what I came up with, it did look like, since obviously Wichita State isn't an all sports school to the AAC, their buyout is considerably smaller. What I found was 5 million. At least that's what some people were reporting is their buyout. Um, so the Mountain West has still got a little bit of a war chest because it was initially when they it was initially, I think the Mountain West had like 17 or 18 million that they were keeping back to use for future expansion, to be able to offer teams to help them out with their buyouts and stuff like that. So they've obviously used some of that, but I think they would still have a decent chunk left, so they probably could take care of that if Wichita State was interested. Um, would they be? I don't know. They obviously haven't had the success in the AC that they were hoping for. Uh, I mean, they had the big fallout with their great coach, was it Greg Marshall, I think is his name, a couple years back, and so they've been kind of struggling to regain their footing after that. But they're supposed to be decent this year, but it's just a rabid fan base in Wichita, Kansas, which is just kind of right on the edge of our footprint. It would give you that central time zone, right? Which everyone is always talking football about how important that is as far as being able to provide those earlier TV slots in the day. I would think that basketball wise it implies there too. Um, so yeah, that'd be my first call. Take a shot at it. Um, I'm just looking. I'm at 34 minutes right now. I was gonna plan on try keeping these to 25, so I'm gonna try to pick up the pace here a little bit. So then we call Wichita. Let's hypothetically say they can get them. Then my next call, we're even gonna go deeper into the bag here of long shots, giving St. Louis a call. Uh, they're in the A10, obviously. I'm sure a lot of people are like St. Louis. Yeah, sure. it, it expands that geographic footprint a little bit, but they're already on the outskirts of the footprint of the A10. Granted, we're talking different directions and not probably not as far, but still, I mean, if the PAC if the Pack can talk Memphis, Tennessee, then I think we can talk St. Louis, Missouri. But so yeah, total long shot, but they should have a really solid team this year. Obviously got Indiana State's head coach coming over, a few of their players, but expected to be one of the top teams in the A10 this year. But it'd potentially be a great ad. So yeah, we're really bumping up the numbers on here on this basketball conference, which kind of makes you wonder like how big would they consider going? How many teams would they consider adding? So let's say let's go back to we've got Grand Canyon. Let's say there is no interest in going east to Wichita and St. Louis. Either way, probably with or without Wichita, St. Louis, you'd have to think they're probably looking at making at least one addition in California. So let's analyze California, and then we're going to wrap this puppy up. So, okay, so obviously uh, we got the WCC, we got the Big West. Okay, that's pretty much none of the other Western United States basketball conferences. There really aren't any options out there. So we're just going to kind of, for this exercise, we're going to look at those two. First, let's look at the WCC. Okay, obviously the elephant in the room, St. Mary's. Okay, my guess is that I've got a feeling that the Pack ends up adding St. Mary's. Here's the deal. So Gonzaga is basically dog walking the conference leadership over there. Okay, and I just have a feeling that they're going to say, "Hey, we'd like our old pals," and they make the jump there. Uh, let's say for some reason, one other thing on the Pack. So if you're wondering what the Pack's going to do, it's basically it's Memphis and or Texas State, right? They're in this predicament where anybody they add at this point is going to reduce their TV money. So it's a real tricky deal, right? Memphis is probably the one school out there that would probably decrease at the least. And I feel like the leadership at that school, basketball is all they care about. Okay, so when it comes down to it, the leadership at that school is going to want to be in a conference with Gonzaga and some of the other better teams there. That's just my feeling. And then Texas State is they're either they're that option if the Pac wants to go to 9 to get the 8 conference football games, or if for some reason it doesn't work out with Memphis, then they're the obvious choice and they probably just stay at 8. All right, enough talking about the Pac. So back to the WCC. So let's look at if for some reason St. Mary's doesn't go to the Pac, what does the Mountain West do? So St. Mary's is really tricky, right? I mean, what is it? It's Randy Bennett, okay? He's everything there, and he's what I should have looked up exactly how old he is, 62 or 64 or something like that. But he's a little bit on the older side. All right, I looked it up. Yeah, he's 62, but it's like I mean, there's nothing else with that school, right? Tiny, tiny enrollment, high school gym. Just you'd just be scared to death if you add that school. I think I've heard like the majority of the rest of their sports are just terrible. I mean, yeah, if they call you and say that they want in, I mean, yeah, you probably plug your nose and just have to let him in because of the success that they've had. Their their average Ken Palm in the last 5 years is 33, and you're gonna hear me. I'll use that just the average Ken Palm in the last 5 years on some of these rest of these California schools that we're gonna go over real quick. So yeah, I don't know on the St. Mary's, like I said, but then if they don't go, if they don't go to the pack, whether they turn it down or they are not invited there, they may just opt to stay in their tiny little conference where they're surrounded by four other private schools. Um, so moving on from St. Mary's, what else does the WCC have to offer? I would probably say the only other school that you would really want to even consider would be University of San Francisco. Average 5-year Ken Palm of 71, which is that's pretty darn good. Um, Enrollment of 12,000. Obviously not a big school, but it is the the big. I think it's the biggest uh, WCC school. Um, their gym is okay. I think I have it written down 5,300. I mean, it's one of the better gyms in the West Coast Conference, which isn't saying a whole lot, but you know, let's just hypothetically, let's say St. Mary's goes to the pack, San Fran's sitting there. Do you grab them and just drive a stake into the heart of the WCC and just finish it off? I mean, I'm not saying that that the conference is gonna dissolve, but you'd basically be grabbing that last team that has anything. Um, so yeah, it's kind of a tough call in San Fran. And then just a quick mention. I mean, there's Santa Clara, average 5-year Ken Palm of 113, which is decent, but they've had some NBA first round picks here in the last couple years, but I don't know. It's like right next to San Jose State. I don't know what they would think of that. They probably wouldn't be too excited. Um, so I'd say probably a no go there. So that leaves jumping into the Big West. Uh, the school, the school that I think is probably the ad to make, and it's kind of weird because there's not a lot of people out there talking about it. Is I'm gonna go UC Irvine. I really think it just makes a ton of sense. You've got a huge school. It's like 30,000 plus enrollment. It's obviously in Irvine, which is essentially Los Angeles, which again would kind of fill a nice gap for the Mountain West, getting us into Southern California where we don't have anybody anymore. Um, they've been just super solid. Russell Turner, I believe, is the name of the head coach there. He's been there for quite a while. Like I want to say 14. This is like his 14th season. Just been super consistent. Average Ken Palm the last 5 years of 106. Um, Last year I think they were 80 something. Team should be even better this year. They're predicted to win the Big West this year. Just really solid. You get that feeling that they're kind of topped out with what they can do in the Big West, and if they could get uh, a little bit of a goose from the Mountain West Conference, I could really see that program taking a step. You've got one of the better. I mean, it's not special, but one of the better arenas down there. It seats 5,000. Um, yeah, that's. I might even I might even lean Irvine over like a USF. Um, would I, yeah, that's about all I'll say on that. Then really the only other Big West team I think that you would look at is UC Santa Barbara. They recruit at a really high level. Average 5-year Chem Pom of 114, and there's been a lot of variation in there to get to that 114. There's been some really high, really low. They were terrible last year, even though they had a guy that was ended up being an early second round pick this past NBA draft. But they brought in some really high level transfers, and they're really looking to take a big jump back into the top of the Big West there. Uh, it that head coach, he seems to be. I think he was an assistant at Arizona. Name escapes me right now, but I guess one of the issues with Santa Barbara when you're comparing it to like Irvine, right? Like Irvine's going to be a lot easier to get to. I'm gonna imagine you can just fly right into Los Angeles and a short drive to Irvine, whereas Santa Barbara, I want to say is like a couple hour drive. So kind of gets a, not that that's the biggest thing in the world, but I think with where the Mountain West is at, especially with adding Hawaii all sports, they're probably really looking to make things as easy as possible to any other additions, like being able to fly direct into Phoenix for Grand Canyon or that type of additions. So that's one thing that scares me a little bit about Santa Barbara. Um, they also have volleyball lines on their basketball court, which just doesn't fly for me, and I don't think that's flying in the Mountain West either. So that would have to be remedied. But so, and again, when we're sitting here, we're talking UC Santa Barbara, Irvine, USF, St. Mary's. We're probably looking at one addition, and you're kind of, there's pros and cons with each of them. It it probably comes down to, in large part, how bad does one of one of those schools want to make the move up, and what kind of facility improvements can they promise and things of that nature. So, but you'd have to think that they would like to add something more in California and kind of really fill out that footprint in the Southwest. But yeah, we went way over on time allotment. Um, we'll just throw in a couple shout outs before I forget. If you're interested in more of this conference realignment stuff, a good podcast to follow is the Big Mountain Podcast. That dude's name is JY. He's um, at TBM_JY. He's a good follow on Twitter. He's really staying abreast on all this stuff. And yeah, it's got it's obviously he's more on the football side, but he's following this Mountain West expansion more than anyone else out there. So he's a good person to check out. Chris Murray, obviously, the beat writer for the Pack, just does an outstanding job. I just can't say enough good things about Chris. Just love following his work, and yeah, make sure you Wolfpack fans are out there are following him. It's great. And then just one other podcast. It's called the Top of the Mountain West podcast. I I did not find that until last year's season was already over, and then I finally stumbled on that because he was just on Spotify last year, and I think he has expanded to Apple Podcasts this year. But Coach Mosier is his name, I believe. Just does outstanding work. By far the best podcast out there if you are looking for Mountain West basketball. Give him give him a look. And other than that, let's wrap this puppy up. We're going to try to whip out. I mean, it's going to be a miracle if I can get this uploaded and published with my technological knowledge. Hopefully we can get this out to you guys, and we're gonna pop off 2 more episodes this weekend. One we're gonna cover that do a little roster analysis, mainly just looking at the incoming transfers for this year's Wolfpack team, and then we're gonna give our predictions for order of finish in the Mountain West this year. That'll be on the third podcast. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. Sorry that ran a little long. Hopefully it didn't get too boring for you guys. Yeah, definitely gonna try to keep them about half that length going forward. But yeah, so no, I appreciate you guys sticking with me. I'm sure this sounds terrible. Uh, I promise I will get better as the year goes on. So just bear with me and just give me another shot if you thought this was disgusting. I will promise to keep improving. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.